Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe? So I had a look at the structure deck, Cybernetic Successor, and I felt like this needed kind of a commented replay because the combos, well, they're not necessarily hard, but they can be a bit confusing because you kind of need to get into the whole scene of getting enough Cyber Darks into the graveyard and knowing what to do, when to do it. And yeah, the deck can be quite bricky anyway, but this is meant to be showing the stuff that you kind of want to be doing, some stuff that you might misplay. This was during testing, so bear in mind I have made some misplays as well, which I will be analyzing, which I will be talking about, so you might not make them in your own plays. And we're looking at our starter hand. We have one Searcher, two Searcher, three Searchers, one Disruption, and one other spell card that can be quite nice in the grind game, but usually isn't something that you overly care about. So you have like a discard as well, which will be helpful. So how we played this hand, considering we obviously want to be getting the maximum out of our starting hand, and I decided to go with Cyber Emergency first, because in case your opponent has a hand trap, then you can still use your Cyber Dragon Core and your Cyber Dog Claw Surge, because they are a lot more important than the surges from your Cyber Emergency, because you basically already have Cyber Dragon Core, and anything else that you can get from this is not overly important in this specific hand yet. So if you have a surge in hand that you know isn't really important, try to use that first to bait out your opponent's hand traps, because this deck is mainly being played like maximum of gold, I would say. Like platinum is way too good for playing this kind of structure deck anyway. So you'll be facing off against opponents that might not be too sure what your deck does, or might shotgun stuff like Ash Blossom a bit. So you will get away with that a lot more often than if you play against actually good players, or players that know what your deck does. So we start off, like I said, we will be starting with Cyber Emergency, and actually there was the Ash Blossom, so that worked out well on my part. So I know if they have more hand traps, then I'm still kind of screwed, but it is what it is. This deck crumbles under any form of disruption. I decided then to go for Cyber Dark Claw, because at least they couldn't really disrupt that one. The Cyber Dragon Core could still be disrupted by Effect Veiler, Impermanences, and whatnot, so that would be annoying. So I searched one important card. You can decide which one you want to go for, Cybernetic Horizon or the other one. Both can be searched by Cyber Dragon Core as well, so keep that in mind because they're both cyber spell traps. I decided to go for this one first, so I can actually use the effect of that one, because I know now they can't disrupt this as well. And then we would be going for Cyber Dragon Core, because then I thought if I can use this, I can search some of the other stuff. I wanted to know first if they let me get into my other Cyber Dog card, which is Cyber Dog Realm. They did, so that was good. If they didn't, then my turn would have probably been a bit harder, because I would have had not much of a way to normal summon the other card. But the thing is, either way, if they had like an Effect Veil or an Impermanence, then it doesn't matter if I would have normal summoned Core, or if I would have normal summoned any of the Cyber Dark monsters. The good one that searches Power Bond and enables Graveyard Fusion, because then they would have used the same effect on that card otherwise. And so I was a bit screwed in this one in the first place, because there was not much I could have done to actually get into Cyber Dark Realm, because I've already used Claw, and if you already use Claw, then you can't Surge Realm anymore if your core effect gets negated, and then you have that problem. So what you want to be doing now is get as many Cyber Dark monster, Cyber Dark names in your graveyard as possible, and we do this. First of all, we Surge, because we wanted to just, it doesn't really matter at this stage, but in this case, you needed a discard, but we search Chimera, because Chimera has an effect when it's sent to the graveyard, so you can send another Cyber Dog to the graveyard, and so on. So we needed to use that search first, send Chimera to the graveyard, send Hertz from your deck to the graveyard, because Hertz actually draws you a card. Well, not draws you a card, but searches your card from your graveyard or from your deck, which will be adding Cyber Dragon to your hand. Not that it overly matters, but it could matter for the next turn. And yeah, that is what you usually want to be doing. Then you get Cannon, and here I sent to the graveyard the Cyber Dark Dragon. Usually you want to be sending Cyber End Dragon. I made a little mistake on my part with the counting, because I knew I had Cannon, I knew I had well, basically I thought I needed to send Cyber Dark Dragon to have 5 Cyber Darks in graveyard, but I forgot that I can link well, fusion off Cyber Dark Chimera with Core later on, because this was the first time I actually included the card that I decided to include basically because of that reason, which is Cybernetic Fortress Dragon, because this card can fusion summon off with your own monsters with machine monsters as contact fusion, basically like a back in the days Link summon, and then I would have had 5 in the graveyard and I could have sent Cybernetic Dragon, but I sent this card instead. Doesn't really matter because I wanted to go with the 2 negates, with the negate plus Lost Wind anyway, and not go for the big boss monster, but you could have gone for the next turn then if your monster survived the turn, and now I couldn't. So keep in mind, if you have a chance to get 5 in the graveyard without sending your fusion monster to the graveyard, then definitely send Cybernetic Dragon. What we do now, trigger effect of Hertz, Chimera. Here you can chain block. Technically Chimera is more important than Hertz, so it would have been better to chain block the Chimera with Hertz, but I don't think they had any graveyard, like at this point I didn't think they had any graveyard negations anyway, and Ash Blossom and stuff was already out, so I kind of got a bit sloppy with it. Bear in mind this was all testing, so I don't usually play with the utmost urgency as I would maybe if I do a ranked climb. Getting the Cyber Dragon, using Cannon, get 1 more card to the graveyard, then search Chimera. Chimera, very important. I had to get it here because Chimera you do need for your combo. Like there's basically no way around the combo unless you specifically draw Overload Fusion in the end. So there's not really a way around using Chimera's effect. If Chimera's effect gets negated, then usually there's not much you can do. You discard 1 spell trap, you discard the field spell because it doesn't really overly matter, get Power Bond, and then you can use Power Bond. Well, first of all, we do what I already talked about. We use Fortress Dragon to send more cards to the graveyard. Now we have, well, 6 engraved because I miscounted. Should have been a Cybernetic Dragon. And now we can actually use Power Bond to go into our, well, somewhat boss monster. There's multiple, but this one can be quite nice as an Omni Negate and has quite a lot of attack points. So it's not too bad actually, because it keeps the Power Bond attack, which is quite fun. And if you have Hertz in your graveyard, that's a good card to actually equip to it, because usually 4,000 attack points, or you could technically equip any other kind of card to give it more attack, but the attack doesn't really matter that much anymore because you're already at 4,000. But if you use the effect of this card and this card gets sent to the graveyard, then you get the search off again, and then you can actually recycle your Cyber Dragon core that's in the graveyard and then use the effect again the next turn. So this is something that is quite nice. You take your 2,000 points of damage, but that's usually okay. It's not a massive problem. Here I decided to negate Junk Converter. I'm not overly, I don't overly know what the whole deck does that they did. I know I had a disruption for Junk Speeder, so I thought maybe stop them from doing anything, possibly end on an empty board if they don't have a normal summon, so I didn't want them to search anything. It turns out it didn't overly matter in the end. But yeah, Junk Converter is a good card, so I thought negate that, but maybe some Synchron players might tell me that this was pointless. In the end, I knew I had at least 1 more disruption. Now I can get the core back to hand because I popped the card. They did have Junk Synchron. I could have stopped them here, but then I don't know if they have some kind of other shenanigans that they can do to get into Junk Speeder. Well, I couldn't have disrupted them anyway here because it's only Lost Wind. But I could have done like the effect of this card later on if they searched like a Junk Synchron and hit them on the normal summon then, and then still have had the Lost Wind. So this was also something you could have done in that case. But yeah, in the end it did work out. They do go for Junk Speeder, as most of these Synchron decks will do. Junk Speeder, very strong card if it goes off, but sadly is very, very, very easily disruptible, especially if you go second, and you don't really run a go second variant, because then you don't have much that breaks your opponent's board if they actually have negates. So we do negate the Junk Speeder, and from that point onwards, yeah, I don't think they did anything. I think they just surrendered because there was nothing they could do. And that is it. Hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. I hope you have a nice day.